I'm 33, and this story starts last winter, just after Christmas. My brother Nathan died suddenly. Heart attack, they said. He was only 35. It didn't feel real. Nathan was the strong one, always working out, eating clean, annoyingly obsessed with kale and kettlebells. But the autopsy came back with nothing suspicious, just natural causes. I remember sitting in that freezing funeral home, surrounded by our grieving family, feeling like the ground had cracked under me. He was gone, just like that. His wife, Elise, was the picture of devastation, crying into her sleeve, barely able to walk. Everyone was comforting her, and I tried to be there too, even though something about her grief felt rehearsed, like she knew when to cry, when to collapse into someone's arms. I hated myself for even thinking that. She just lost her husband, my brother. I shoved those doubts down. After the funeral, she was left completely alone in the massive house they'd bought together out in the countryside. My parents were too old to help her much, and Elise didn't have close family. A few weeks later, when she said she was scared of living alone, I offered to let her move into my guest room, just until she could figure things out. That was my first mistake. She moved in on a Thursday, with 2 suitcases and a photo of her and Nathan on their wedding day. I helped her carry her stuff in, made tea, tried to keep things light. She was quiet, pale, still wearing her wedding ring. I thought we were just 2 people trying to survive the same storm, but things got weird almost immediately. The first night, I woke up at 2:47 a.m. to the sound of humming, soft and slow, coming from the kitchen. I got up, walked down the hallway, and there she was, Elise, standing in front of the open fridge, staring into it, humming this creepy lullaby I couldn't quite. She didn't even flinch when just looked at me and said she couldn't sleep. I said nothing, back to bed. The next day, she acted like nothing happened, and that's how it's been. Strange little moments, quiet behaviors, things that don't quite make sense. But the worst part is, I found something I wasn't supposed to see, and now I'm starting to think my brother didn't die of natural causes after all. It was about 3 weeks after Elise moved in when I started noticing the pattern. Every Thursday night, she'd disappear into her room right after dinner. No TV, no phone calls, just silence. And then, sometime around midnight, I'd hear movement, soft footsteps, sometimes drawers opening and closing. I didn't want to be creepy about it, so I never snooped. But it stuck in my... Then one Thursday, I had a terrible migraine. Couldn't sleep, couldn't lie still. I ended up walking around the house in the dark, just to clear my head. When I passed Elise's room, I heard something that stopped me in my tracks. Whispering, low, almost like a chant. I couldn't make out the words. Just that rhythmic tone, like she was repeating something to herself. I thought maybe she was praying. Maybe she had some strange grief ritual I didn't understand. I let it go. But the next morning, curiosity got the better of me. She'd left early to go on a walk, which she did often, always alone. So I knocked on her door. No answer. I opened it slowly. Her room was spotless. The bed was made, curtains open, light spilling in, nothing, until I noticed the closet. The door was slightly ajar. Now I know how that sounds. I wasn't trying to invade her privacy, but something compelled me to peek inside. Maybe it was maybe it was the way she always kept that closet door just never shut. Inside, there were the usual things. Shoes, coats, some of her on the top shelf, tucked behind a pile of scarves, was a small black note, the kind with no title on it, just plain leather back. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The first page had Nathan's name on it, written over and over again in neat, careful handwriting. The next few pages were even stranger. Dates, scribbled phrases, some crossed out, some circled. Things like, he's starting to ask questions. Don't forget the pills. Every morning, empty the capsules first. The drawer in the garage. Check it again. Thursday. Always Thursday. That's when he's weakest. I froze. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely think. Who was he? I flipped further in. There was an entry dated 2 weeks before Nathan died. It said, his chest pains are getting worse. He thinks it's just stress. Should I stop? What if it's too late already? But it has to look natural. It has to. I felt like someone had sucked all the air out of the room. I shoved the notebook back where I found it, careful to leave everything exactly the way it was. That night, Elise came home humming again. I couldn't sleep that. I kept hearing her humming. Same low, eerie tune, over and over. It sounded almost pleased, like she was content, like whatever she was doing in that room gave her peace. Meanwhile, my mind was spinning. The notebook, the pills, the garage drawer. The next morning, she went out again. Said she was going to the lake trail nearby for a walk. Same excuse she always used. I waited 10 minutes, then grabbed the spare key to the garage and went straight to the work. There were 3 drawers built into it, none of them locked. The first was filled with old tools and screws. The second had gardening gloves, a flashlight, and some duct tape. The third one nearly stopped my heart. At first glance, it looked empty, just a dusty wooden bottom. But when I ran my fingers along the edge, I felt a ridge, like a false bottom. I pried it up with a screwdriver. Underneath was a plastic bag. Inside, a prescription bottle with Nathan's name on it. The label had been peeled off halfway, like someone tried to remove it but gave up. The medication? Digoxin. Now, I'm no doctor, but I work in medical billing. I've seen thousands of prescriptions. Digoxin isn't just for heart issues. It's a powerful drug, and in high doses, it can mimic heart attack symptoms. Worse, it can cause one. The bottle was half full. The pills looked untouched, but then I saw something else. An envelope. It was sealed, but unmarked. I opened it carefully, expecting, I don't know, receipts? Notes? Instead, it was filled with photographs. Old ones clearly taken over the years. Nathan and Elise in different places, at the beach, on a hike, in our parents' backyard. But there was something off about them. In every single photo, Nathan looked tired, sick, his eyes dull, his smile fading with each one. Then I found a picture that wasn't of Nathan. It was Elise, standing in our kitchen, the same kitchen she stands in now. Only this picture was dated 3 months before Nathan died. She was holding a glass and smiling, not at Nathan, at someone else. And there, in the edge of the frame, was me. I dropped the photo. What was she doing in my house 3 months before Nathan died? He never brought her over. I would have remembered. We were never that close. Elise always kept her distance, until after he died. Unless he didn't bring her, unless she came alone. After finding that picture of Elise in my kitchen, with me barely in frame, I couldn't breathe. I felt sick. It was like my memory betrayed me. I don't remember her ever being in my home before Nathan died. Not once. I checked the back of the photo again. The date was printed on it like those old film prints. October 14th. Nathan died in December. That photo meant she'd been here, in my house, weeks before his death, without telling me, without him telling me. I shoved the envelope back into the drawer and ran inside. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely open my laptop. I started scrolling through my phone, trying to find anything from that week. Texts, photos, something to prove I wasn't losing my mind. Nothing came up. But then I remembered. I keep an old wall calendar. It's pinned up behind the fridge. It sounds weird, but it's how I track house stuff, filter changes, trash pickups, when the plumber came. I pulled it out and flipped to October. There it was. October 14th. I'd written, Elise lunch, you Nathan? A memory hit me hard. That was the day Nathan asked if Elise could drop off some soup for me. I was sick, bedridden with the flu. He said she made great chicken soup and wanted to help. I didn't even open the door. I was asleep when she came. It didn't seem like a big deal at the time. But now? Now I had proof she'd been in my house while I was unconscious. And that picture? It wasn't taken by accident. Someone took it while I was passed out in the other room. Why? Why would Elise take a photo like that? Why would she keep it hidden in a garage drawer, stuffed between pills and notes that hinted at drugging my brother? I was losing it. My heart felt like it was going to break through my chest. I went back to the drawer one more time, desperate to find something else. Anything, and that's when I saw it. Under the envelope, stuck to the bottom with tape, was a folded sheet of paper, cream color, thick, like old stationery. I unfolded it carefully. It was a letter, handwritten. At the top it said, to Jay, in case I can't finish what I started. Jay? Was that me? Was it Nathan? Was Elise writing to someone else entirely? The letter wasn't long, but what it said chilled me to the bone. He's starting to remember things he shouldn't. I can't risk it. If he talks, it's over. I'll finish it before that happens. The body will say now. I just need a little more time. You'll know when it's done. That was it. No signature, no return address, just that. I stood there frozen, staring at the paper like it might catch fire and disappear if I blinked. Who the hell is Jay? And what exactly did she finish? That letter haunted me. I read it over and over, memorizing the curves of each letter, trying to figure out who Jay could be. I even considered the unthinkable. What if it was written to me? My first initial is J, and Elise always called me by it in texts, but that didn't make any sense. Unless I was being dragged into something I never agreed to. Unless there was more to this than I ever realized. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept the envelope with the photos hidden under my bed, and the letter tucked into a book on my shelf. I felt like I was living in a bad dream. Elise was asleep in the next room, or at least I thought she was. I didn't hear the humming that night, which somehow felt even worse. I knew I couldn't keep digging blindly, so the next morning I decided to do something a little underhanded. When Elise went out for one of her long walks, I waited until I saw her disappear down the street, then snuck into her room again. Not for the closet this time, for her phone. She had a habit of leaving it plugged in on the nightstand. No lock, no fingerprint. It buzzed once as I picked it up. Some Instagram notification, but I ignored it. I went straight to her contacts. She didn't have many saved. My name, my mom and dad, a few old friends a couple of contacts with first names only, like Lila and Morgan, and then one that stood out, J. No last name, no picture, just a simple letter. J. I clicked the contact. The number was local. No texts, no call history. At least not saved on her end. But something about that entry made my stomach twist. Why keep someone saved as just a letter? Especially that letter? I copied the number and texted it from my— Hey, it's me. It's done. Just like we planned. I waited. Nothing for a while. Then, 5 minutes later, a reply. Who is this? I didn't respond. I blocked the number immediately. I just wanted to see if anyone would reply. And someone did. So Jay wasn't just a coincidence. It was real. Whoever they were still around. Later that afternoon, Elise came home like nothing had happened. She smiled, made tea, offered me some like we were best friends. But I noticed something different. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring anymore. And when she reached into her purse to grab something, I caught a glimpse of something else. A familiar black notebook, the same one I found in the closet. Only this time, there was something sticking out of it, a photo, folded in half. I didn't see the face, but I swear, it looked like me. After I saw the photo peeking out of Elise's notebook, something inside me cracked. I stopped pretending. No more polite smiles. No more pretending I was okay. I kept my distance that evening, locked my door, and didn't come out until I heard her go to bed. I needed time, space to think. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something didn't add up. Nathan didn't even have heart issues. No diagnosis, no signs. He was obsessed with staying healthy, so why had no one pushed harder for an autopsy? The coroner signed it off as natural causes. But how thorough was that investigation, really? I thought about the pills I found in the garage, the digoxin, and the note. He's starting to remember things. What things? Then I remembered something Nathan told me a few months before he died. It was in passing, casual. He'd said their basement door had started sticking. They couldn't get it open anymore, and Elise refused to call a repair guy. She was weird about it, he'd said. I hadn't thought about that basement in weeks. Since Elise moved in, I hadn't stepped foot down there. No reason to, until now. I waited until morning. Elise always slept in late on weekends. Around 9 a.m., I crept downstairs. The basement door was at the back of the laundry room, half hidden behind a drying rack. The handle felt stiff, like it hadn't been touched in a while. I twisted it slowly. It opened on the third try with a loud click. The stairs were steep and narrow. No light. I used my phone flashlight and slowly descended. Everything was covered in dust. Boxes stacked high, old furniture draped in sheets. I hadn't been down there since the year I moved in. I kept meaning to clean it out, but never got around to it. I was about to leave. Nothing looked unusual, when something caught my eye in the corner. A tarp, thick plastic, heavy, stretched over something long and low. I walked closer. Underneath, I saw a crate, wooden, padlocked shut, but someone had scratched something into the top of it. Just one word. Remember. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. There was no key nearby, no tools, but I knew where the bolt cutters were, in the garage. I didn't have time to get them without risking Elise waking up, so I took photos. The lock. The word carved into the top. The corners of the crate where something dark had stained the wood. It looked almost like rust or blood. And then I noticed something else. Something I almost missed. A phone, sitting on a small shelf beside the crate. Old, dusty. An iPhone, maybe 2 or 3 years outdated. Cracked screen. Dead battery. I grabbed it and slipped it into my hoodie pocket. I didn't breathe again until I was back upstairs with the door locked behind me. Elise was still sleeping, or pretending to. Either way, I had what I needed, and something told me that phone, that old dead phone, wasn't hers. I think it was Nathan's. I didn't waste any time. I grabbed an old charging cable from my desk drawer and plugged the phone in. It buzzed faintly, just once, before the Apple logo flickered onto the cracked screen. The battery icon showed red. I paced my room like a madman, while it slowly crept up enough to turn on. I kept checking the hallway every few seconds, half expecting Elise to be standing there watching me. But she wasn't. She didn't suspect a thing. When the lock screen finally lit up, my heart dropped. It was Nathan. His background photo, an old picture of him and me from our college trip to Denver. I hadn't seen that photo in years. He'd kept it this whole time? No passcode. I tapped to open. The interface was glitchy. It hadn't been used in a while, and a few of the apps wouldn't load. But the Messages app worked. So did Notes. I opened the texts first. There weren't many recent ones. Most conversations were months old. Some with me, my mom, coworkers. Normal stuff. Then I saw a thread labeled simply, Unknown. Do not reply. I opened it. The last message was from a week before he died. You lied about everything. I found the bottle. If anything happens to me, someone will find out. No reply after that. I scrolled up and my blood ran cold. There were dozens of messages, all from that same number, mostly short. She doesn't suspect. He needs to go. Soon. And then one that made me sit down because I felt like my legs would give out. You'll be taken care of. He's not the priority anymore. The brother is. The brother is. Me. That was sent 3 days before Nathan died. The phone buzzed in my hand. I jumped. But it wasn't a message, just a calendar notification. Remember, 3 days left. I checked the calendar app. It had been set for the day Nathan died. A recurring reminder, set to repeat every year. Just that one word, remember. I sat there for a long time. That word was carved into the crate downstairs. It was the last thing he tried to tell me. That night, I didn't sleep. Elise knocked on my door once. Said she made tea and left some out for me. I said I wasn't feeling well. She hovered outside the door for a moment too long. When I finally peeked through the crack, she was gone. But the teacup, it was still warm. And beside it, folded neatly on a napkin, was a note, in her handwriting. You've been quiet lately. Are you okay? Nothing strange about that, right? Except underneath it, in tiny print, barely noticeable at first glance, was another line. Something she must have thought I wouldn't see. You were never supposed to look in the basement. I didn't touch the tea. I didn't even breathe near it. I stared at that napkin until my eyes burned. That little line scrawled at the bottom. It was Elise's handwriting, no question. I checked old birthday cards she gave Nathan, even a post-it note she'd left on my fridge a few weeks back. Same slant, same curled R. You were never supposed to look in the basement. That wasn't a warning. It was a threat. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. I sat in bed with Nathan's old phone in one hand and a baseball bat in the other, every creak in the house making my skin crawl. I started thinking about every little thing Elise had said or done since she moved in, like how she was always out on walks, but came home without a trace of sweat or dirt on her shoes, or how she never talked about her own family, never once called them, never mentioned friends. I checked her social media accounts. None of them had posted since before Nathan died. She wasn't living a life, she was erasing one. The next morning, I did something reckless. I called the number from the messages. Unknown. Do not reply. Blocked, obviously. Straight to voicemail. No name, no voicemail greeting. But then a few hours later, I got a call. Unknown number. I didn't answer. They called again, then again. No voicemail, no texts. Just ringing. At the same time, Elise was acting too normal. She made pancakes. She offered to do my laundry. She even asked, casually, if I'd seen an old set of keys Nathan used to keep. I lied and said no. That night, I moved the crate. I waited until Elise left for another walk, then grabbed the bolt cutters from the garage and forced the padlock off. The crate was heavier than I expected, but I dragged it upstairs into the living room, right onto the rug. I hesitated before opening it. For a split second, I wondered if I really wanted to see what was inside, but I had to know. I owed it to Nathan. I pried the top open. It wasn't what I expected. No body parts, no hidden treasure, just papers, folders, dozens of them, old medical records, financial statements, journals, and photos. So many photos, some of Nathan, some of Elise, and some of people I didn't know. One thing tied them all together. Every single one of them looked scared, like they knew something, like they'd found out something they weren't supposed to. On the top of one folder, paper-clipped and yellowing, was a file labeled Subject 04, Jonas, non-compliant, terminate. Name is Jonas, and I never told Elise that. I sat there staring at that folder, had teeth. Subject 04, Jonas, non-compliant, terminate. My full name isn't listed anywhere in public direct. Definitely just Jonas. I go by J. Work, social media, and yet here it was, typed on old manila underlined, labeled like I was a my hands were shaking so hard. Inside, someone in tracking, notes, a timeline, a list of visitors, as if it had all been scheduled. And then, Subject 03 showed signs of regression or subject reconnection between siblings. Subject 03 displayed resistance, monitored closely, and termination. My brother was a program, a risk that word, terminated, was used 4 times in the file, all tied to different people. Each name matched the photos I found earlier. I was shaking now, trying to make sense of it all. This wasn't just about Elise. She wasn't acting alone. This was bigger, structured, documented. And then I heard it. The front door creaked open. I hadn't realized how late it was, how dark the room had gotten. I was still crouched over the open crate, papers and photos scattered across the living room rug. When Elise stepped into the hallway, I froze. She didn't say anything right away, just stood there, watching me. Then, in a voice I barely recognized, she asked, "You opened it?" Not shocked, not scared, just calm. She'd been waiting for me to do it. I didn't move, couldn't. She walked in, closed the door behind her and locked it. That quiet, deliberate click echoed through the house like a death sentence. She looked at the crate, the files, then me. "I really didn't want it to be you," she said, and she smiled. But it wasn't sadness in her smile, it was relief. I stood up slowly, not because I thought I could defend myself, because I couldn't. My legs were numb, my throat dry. My mind was screaming, but no words came out. Elise stepped forward, calm as ever, her eyes scanning the papers I'd scattered like broken glass. She didn't ask me to explain. She didn't grab the documents. She didn't try to deny a single thing. Instead, she walked straight to the crate and closed the lid, gently. like she was tucking in a child. "I told them you wouldn't stop," she said. "Nathan didn't, and now here you are. Same blood, same flaw." I asked her what the hell she was talking about, but my voice came out cracked and unfamiliar. That's when she knelt by the crate and pulled out a small metal case that had been hidden in the false bottom. Inside were syringes, labeled vials, a flash drive. She looked at me and said something I will never forget. "You were supposed to forget." She told me the program was old, outdated, a covert behavioral experiment once funded, then disavowed, by a long-buried division of a now-defunct bioresearch company. They called it interpersonal regulation through embedded proxies. In simpler terms, they'd insert someone like Elise into a subject's life to monitor and redirect them, suppress memories, alter relationships, influence decision-making. My brother had been one of the early trials. So had others, people who became isolated, depressed, died under natural circumstances. On paper, it was clean, but Nathan had figured it out. He found the pills. He stopped taking them, he remembered, and he confronted Elise. She told me she begged them not to terminate him, said he could be handled, but he pushed too far. So they cut the line. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Every piece of my life began shifting in my mind, like someone had rearranged the story without me knowing. Elise walked toward me, still holding the metal case. "You were next, but not like him. You weren't supposed to be strong enough to see it." She stepped forward. I stepped back. That's when the lights cut out. Total darkness. I heard a crash, glass breaking, something heavy falling, then footsteps. Not hers. 2 sets. I turned just as someone grabbed my arm. It was my neighbor, Will, from next door. He'd seen the lights on for hours and came to check. The back door had been unlocked. He looked at me, then the crate, then Elise, now standing frozen in the center of the room. "Call the police," I said. "Now." He did. When the officers arrived, Elise didn't fight, didn't cry, didn't explain. She just smiled again, turned to me as they cuffed her, and said, "There are more of us than you think." They took her away. The crate, the photos, the documents, they were all logged into evidence. But here's the part that still keeps me awake. The flash drive? Gone. Disappeared between the time she opened the metal case and when the police arrived, and I still don't know what was on it. The investigation was quiet. No press. No follow-up. The detective handling my case retired 2 weeks later, without explanation. Elise's records vanished. No charges were filed. They said there was insufficient evidence, and mental instability was suspected on her part. They let her go. I moved out of the house 2 days later, but every once in a while, I still get a text from a number with no name. Sometimes it's just a blank message. Sometimes it says, "Remember," and once it said, "You were never Subject 04. He was.